Now, in Live on Live this Wednesday, we're going to take a look at how the United States of America appears to be more divided than ever. Since the election of Donald Trump last year, there's been a spike in hate crimes across the country, police shootings of unarmed black teenagers, widespread accounts of police harassment, and, of course, the resurgence of white supremacists. Now, Donald Trump's response to a neo-Nazi rally in Charlottesville, Virginia last month, in which a counter-protester was killed, continues to rattle in the mind of most Americans. And even last Sunday, at the squeaky clean Miss America pageant, this was the discussion between one of the judges, Jess Cagle, and Miss Texas, Morgana Wood.
Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and the KKK in Charlottesville, Virginia, turned violent and a counter-protester was killed. The president said there was shared blame with, quote, very fine people on both sides. Were there?
The white supremacist issue, it was very obvious that it was a terrorist attack. And I think that President Donald Trump should have made a statement earlier addressing the fact and making sure all Americans feel safe in this country. That is the #1 issue right now.
Now, there you heard it from Miss Texas. Today, I'm joined in the studio by Curtis Young, who's a political communication expert at the ESSEG Business School outside of Paris. And Curtis, you were also the former chairman of the Black Caucus at Democrats Abroad. You're very welcome back to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here, David.
Great to see you back. Well, we had a very, very interesting, unfortunate roller coaster of a summer. And now that we're picking up the pieces, it's great that you're able to come in and answer a few questions about what exactly is going on. Now, one would have thought that what we witnessed in Charlottesville last month was the first event of its kind, and that all of this has all happened since the inauguration of Donald Trump in January, who, of course, was endorsed by neo-Nazis, the KKK, and the so-called alt-right. I hate that term. It's just really a new formula for the sanitized white supremacists. But this would all be untrue if that was only the last few months. The divisions in America have gone very deep, and we know how long they go back. Just give us a brief look at the past 2 decades.
How about, I can go back further than that.
Because, you go back 2 centuries.
These divisions have been going on since since basically the founding of this experiment in democracy called America. It began in 1619 when the first slaves set foot on the American shore. There was always a question: what do we do with these? Well, we can't say people. That's not what they were considered. But they were in that condition for 200 and something years, 245 years. 1865, Emancipation Proclamation. Abraham Lincoln starts the Republican Party in 1860. All right. So the Emancipation Proclamation basically frees the slaves that were in the rebel states. That was followed really quickly with the 13th Amendment, which gave freedom to them all. All right. So these people had about 13 years in the sun before 1877. The Hayes Compromise. It's the end of Reconstruction, and it's now time for America to put the genie back in the bottle. This is what we're still dealing with now in 2017.
And segregation.
And if segregation became Jim Crow laws, vagrancy laws, if you don't have identity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you go into prison. Prisons were set up. Convict labor was started. This horrible situation of basically de facto slavery.
No, I mean, we most of us know the history, and it's great just to get a recap of that. But let's have a look at what's happening today and on the other side of the fence, if you will. Now, would you agree yourself that the rise of the so-called alt-right is mostly a result of far-left identity politics? I mean, just to give a kind of a recap, about a decade ago, you could say that far-left groups, often called social justice warriors, began to push for ideas about white privilege, about mansplaining, and far-left feminism. And this now has kind of played into the hands of the far-right, who call this cultural Marxism. Do they have a point?
It's really complicated, David, because what are the things I have to go back again? Civil War.
Sure.
Okay. Civil War ends, and it's a great defeat for the South, and this is what we're dealing with now. Okay. So there's a movement started, the Lost Cause movement. This whole idea of re-explaining what the Civil War is about, saying, no, it was not about slavery. It was more about states' rights. The slaves were content, and they had a wonderful life, and things were really pretty cool. And one of the things that happened with this new narrative is that women in the South and their organizations began to construct monuments to that lost cause narrative. Their hero was Robert E. Lee.
Sure, but this is where the Charlottesville came
exactly.
from. Yeah.
This is where it all comes from. So what we're talking about is all of this is going on a bed of white supremacy. Sure. That's what the whole idea. Now, this has gone on and on and on. Donald Trump is simply giving voice.
Do you believe that he's a racist or just an opportunist?
He's an idiot. I mean, it's hard to pin this guy
Sure.
down. He's not intelligent enough to be a racist. He's a guy who uses these kinds of things for his own development, if you will. I mean, you remember he's the guy who started the idea that Barack Obama was not born in America.
Sure.
He's
the birther issue.
He's the birther issue. He's carried that on. He carried on the idea that let's see his grades. He can't be smart enough to have gone to college, because the whole idea is Barack Obama just shocked white supremacists. The idea that because he's against their narrative,
Sure,
that he can raise to the presidency, and Trump has climbed on the back of that to his own behest.
No, I mean, you have got the apologists here. You're saying, well, this is part of our culture. Do you think that Confederate monuments have any place in American in American cities?
Well, that's very difficult, because Confederate monuments are a part of the of American history. The context within which these monuments went up, that's what's problematic. Because when you start taking these monuments down, you find out that they're really cheaply constructed, because they went up really quickly.
I saw there was a meme there about when they pulled them down, it was made out of basically pieces of
because
tin.
they went up really quickly, because these monuments are monuments to white supremacy. And so the question is, do we have a pluralistic country, or is it really a white country? That's the argument.
Well, kind of going back now to the idea of identity politics. Now, let's have a look at the tenets of freedom of speech in the USA. I mean, white supremacists rightly insist that it is their right to express their opinion. But however, one quick question, Curtis: how far do laws regarding hate speech and incitement actually go in the United States?
Not very.
Not very.
No. It's not like here in Europe. You can say just about anything except call fire in the theater. And it all falls neatly under the rubric of
And that, of course, is in reference
speech.
to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so there is a free reign, basically, for these people, you actually think, to
there always has been a free reign. It's been tempered by political leaders who find that it's not really convenient to have these kinds of things in the air. That's all changed. Donald Trump, during his campaign, gave license for all of this.
Sure.
I mean, if you go back to some of his rallies where he says, in the old days, they'd be carried out in a stretcher. Think about the slogans that they use. Think about, we want our country back. Well, that begs the question, back from what? Make America great again. What period are you talking about? What time are you talking about? Well, you were talking about the time
when slavery was
the rigor, and de facto slavery was okay. You're talking about the time up until 1954, Brown versus Board of Education.
Now, indeed, using that rhetoric, this is you have people like Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, saying, "Oh well, bigotry and hatred in America will not be tolerated, and it's against our core values." But they are being tolerated. These things are being tolerated and being normalized by the likes of Fox News, Breitbart News, and even the inner circle of Trump's administration himself. Up until recently, even Steve Bannon, and you have Kellyanne Conway. But what can be done to stop the normalization of white supremacism in the media in the United States?
Well, first of all, it's all a business. We're talking about a neoliberal context where the idea is make as much as you can, as quickly as you can, by any means necessary. So the media played, they played a major role in the creation of the Donald Trump phenomenon, because this was
chasing their tails.
This is good for clicks, if you will.
Clickbait.
So it's a question of America having a conversation that it's never had. It's a question of America having a conversation with itself about the fact that it is a multiracial, multicultural nation this genie will never go back in the bottle, and we have to have a conversation about how do we deal with this. We started this conversation in 1865. It ended abruptly in 1877. We tried to have the conversation again in 1954. That led to the whole civil rights movement and assassinations and that sort of thing. And the Jeff Sessions and the Donald Trumps and the other apologies want to say, let's put this behind us. That's a long time ago. No, I read an article in The Guardian today, in fact, that said that in the United States, at the rate we're going, the median income for blacks 30 years from now will be zero. Saw this in The Guardian while I was waiting to come over here today.
And how do they come to that figure?
They come to that in looking at median income declining, about what's going on with employment, what's going on with black, and they also talked about Hispanics. Hispanics will be about 10 or 12 years behind blacks. Redlining it is still going on, housing and lack of opportunity in housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of the economic terrorism that has been raged against blacks since the default on the 40 acres and a mule promise back in 1865.
Well, there you go. Like, that's really looking back into the history. Now, unfortunately, Curtis, we're running out of time, but I was going to actually ask you a few things about the dark web and pushing like these websites such as Daily Stormer, Underground.
Yeah.
But do you think that this is actually a good thing to take them offline, because they're going to just pop up somewhere else, and we've got very little time, unfortunately?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, David, this is very complicated. Taking them offline, I mean, that doesn't take them away.
Yeah.
These things continue.
They become marginalized, but also they will also gain sympathy, unfortunately.
There you have it. And part of the big problem is just lack of education.
Indeed. My thanks there to Curtis Young, a political commentator here in Paris. And that's all we have for Paris Live PM. Bye-bye.